Hey guys, it's your friend Kobe here, and recently I went to the bank and it got me thinking. Banks have been around for ever, but credit unions didn't start until the 1930s or recently like that. And more recently, online banking has simplified everyone's lives, but complicated which options of which is the best bank to use. And when did credit unions start? How popular and useful are banks? And why do people use banks versus credit unions? Where should I put my money? So, I told my brain to stop spiraling, and I sat down and did the research and found out the differences. And I found out that the best option nowadays totally depends on where you live and what you value, and you may even want to use a combination of the options. So I'm here to help you understand the pros and cons to each so you can make an informed decision for yourself about where to put your money. And I'm doing this because I love helping people understand the world of business and personal finance. If you're interested in stuff like that, make sure you like this video and subscribe so you can see more videos like it and improve your financial situation. And with that out of the way, let's teach you what you need to know about banks and credit unions. I'll start out with just a little history so you can see why banks came first and why people wanted to try other methods like credit unions. The idea of banks goes way back. Even merchants gave grain loans in 2000 BCE. But the typical bank you know of started around the 15th century and didn't come to the United States until Alexander Hamilton stepped in to help the government recover the debt from the Revolution. As the musical portrays, Jefferson butted heads with Hamilton thinking that banks would be giving too much power to the rich, so the politicians and Treasury fought back and forth, and a bunch of early banks failed due to fraud and just bad administration. But eventually, banks improved their systems, but still hundreds of years later, some people don't like the power that banks control. People wanted other options. The first credit union started in Germany in the 1850s. The idea behind the credit union, as opposed to just a regular bank, was to give people who didn't have access to financial services an opportunity to borrow from the savings pooled by all members of the credit union. It kept the members, that's the people whose money was being pooled, in control. Credit unions were more self-reliant. In 1909, the US opened its first credit union. Credit unions really became popular during the Great Depression as more and more Americans were disappointed by their banks, because the banks pretty much stole all their money. They joined with their neighbors to provide each other with the basic savings and borrowing options. So, credit unions became based on groups, neighborhoods, and organizations. Credit unions were still federally chartered, so they weren't some sketchy under-table deal, but they were a little less strict than banks. And those are the main differences between banks and credit unions today. Credit unions are non-profit and members own credit unions. They pool and borrow their money with low interest rates. Meanwhile, banks are for profit and are owned by investors. And they hold some stricter rules on what happens to the money. However, there are pros and cons to both. Whether you should choose a bank or a credit union depends a lot on what you value and what you're looking for, as well as where you live and travel. Not many credit unions or even banks exist in every state. Let's say you're looking for an offering with more branches and ATMs nationwide. Maybe you move a lot or convenience is really important to you. In fact, you would love the most updated techie apps and websites so that you can have the best experience with your money, regardless of where you are. In addition, a wide variety of financial products and a high service experience, especially for loans and retirement plans, are super important to you. You want a special credit card or possibly a mini gift of money for opening an account? If these are the things that you think will give you the most out of your money, you should probably try out a bank. Now let's imagine you're looking for the most money out of your money. That means lower fees on loans, better interest rates on savings account, and better customer service with more flexibility in the rules. You want a company that's willing to stick its neck out for you a little bit and give you a bigger or riskier loan. In this case, you should probably subscribe to my YouTube channel and go for a credit union. Because credit unions distribute the profits among the members, they have a little more money to give directly back to you. And because the members are the owners, there's generally a little bit more flexibility in the rules. Banks may prioritize profits, whereas credit unions will prioritize its members. This graph shows that over the last 10-ish years, there's been a pretty steady increase in the amount of people choosing to use credit unions. The majority of people still use banks. Only about 1/3 use credit unions, but if this trend continues, it won't be very long before credit unions become even more popular. The tricky thing about credit unions, and probably what holds them back a bit from getting more memberships, is the qualifications people need to get into various credit unions. Credit union membership is usually based on belonging to an organization or living in a certain location. But the truth is, it's not actually that hard to find one that you qualify for. You should always have at least one option. If you know of a credit union that you want to be a part of, just call them up or check out their website to see if you qualify. But if you're a little bit lost on where to even start, that's totally okay too. You can check out mapping.ncua.gov and plug in your zip code to find easy options. You can also ask your employer if your company has a credit union that you can join. A few national credit unions are open to anyone regardless of where they work or live, such as Alliant Credit Union, but sometimes the national credit unions are a bit less personal and run more like banks. So there could be less benefit to a credit union that's big and national and open to everyone like that. But there's yet another option, and it may get you even more money for your money. you can consider trying an online bank such as Ally, Access Capital, or Discover. Yeah, many banks have online options and everything like that, and of course more and more being used with time, but if you're ready to jump into having a no in-person location experience, if you're looking for all the highest tech services offered by banks with the convenience of being able to access it no matter where you are in the world, online banking is probably the best option for you. For example, long before Venmo and PayPal were things, you could mail checks from online banks with the same quick electronic access results. My friend did it this way back in the late 1990s. So online banking can really stay ahead of the curve. Plus, probably because online banks don't spend money on physical locations and as many employees, online banks tend to have higher interest rates and lower loan fees than both credit unions and other banks. The only downside to online banking is obvious. There's no in-person options. So if you want to be able to go somewhere and talk to someone in person about getting a loan, or if you want to just ask questions and communicate with a person to person, online banking isn't really the right option for you. You're usually dealing with a computer or with someone over the phone. Plus, you can't take out a bunch of cash all at once. Sure, you can go to an ATM, but there's usually limits for how much you can take out in a day or in a week. But that's probably not an issue for most of us. But it's still something to consider. All in all, online banking is a killer option. And while about 2/3 of Americans use online banking services connected to their physical banks, a little less than 1/3 actually use these online-only banks. There are also a few credit unions that are online only. They do require you to join an organization, but that can be as easy as donating $10 to a certain organization or something like that. The thing is, at this point, the purpose of a credit union can sometimes be defeated by going online and trying to be open to everyone and such. So they seem to run a bit more like banks, and you'll get more bank-like effects. So those are the four options: credit unions, banks, online-only credit unions, and online-only banks. Personally, I generally recommend a credit union over a bank, but I'd probably recommend an online bank over either of those. But that's the great news, you don't have to choose just one of the options. You can keep some money in a bank so that when you travel away from your local credit union, you have someplace you can go while on your trip. You may split between online banking and in-person options, so there's someone you can talk to if needed. But you can keep the online convenience and the best rates. You can do any combination, and that's probably your best option. Figure out whichever combination works best for you. Just know that whatever option you choose, your money should be equally safe. This wasn't always the case. Credit unions didn't used to be insured, but in 1970 they started getting backed by government insurance policies, and now both banks and credit unions are equally insured up to $250,000. In the end, honestly, banks and credit unions are becoming more and more similar with time, especially the online versions. Online banking and credit unions are rising in popularity, but this rise is also making traditional banks work harder and harder to keep their customers. And this healthy competition evens out the field. But the original differences in the organizations still leave their traces. All these options are pretty good, and which one you choose depends a lot on what you value. But what do you value? Do you like credit unions or banks better? Let me know in the comments below. Also subscribe if you want to keep learning about personal finance. I make cool videos like how to invest in 2023 and which credit cards are best for you. Thank you guys so much again for watching, and I'll see you next time.